Hello and welcome to Launch University. This week we'll be talking about customer validation, starting with personas, the fictitious representation of your people you're trying to sell to. If you want to learn more about Fuse, you can head over to fusespc.com. You can learn about our co-working offerings at 723 The Parkway, or you can learn a little bit more about Launch University and maybe even see face-to-face how we can make this magic happen for you and your business. So I'm Eric Ralston, co-founder and futurist at Fuse, and I'm qualified to talk about personas because one time I did play the demo for Shin Megumi Tensei Persona, the 5-part PlayStation series, and when I got in there, I was like, this is very anime, there's a lot of characters going on, I don't quite understand it, okay, I'll just play a different game, it's fine. It wasn't a bad game, just don't come in on the 5th of the series. So what is Launch University? Launch University is entrepreneurial edutainment for tri-citizens in a hurry, where every week I try to teach you a little bit of something about how to start a business or build your career. And this week, we're going to talk about what to do before you build your rocket to the moon. And when I say rocket to the moon, I mean your prototype of your rocket to the moon. I mean, you're probably dreaming pretty big. You're like, I'm gonna see the stars. I'm gonna find new life, new civilizations. And you're thinking there's gonna be people inside of there. People who like my idea, people who love me and like my idea, my crew, my customers, if you will. What you want to do is you want to find people who are already in love with going to space. In this case, it would be your average Star Trek fan. Okay? The people who already go to conventions. Somebody who's already what someone would call an otaku. And in the world of marketing, it's kind of a reversal. And it's kind of the reversal of the last 2 decades. Going from taking a product, let's just take a product, let's put it on TV, and that's called marketing. To the new model, which is called the Purple Cow model, based on a book by Seth Godin. This is my copy. I bought this just for the purposes of our meeting today. So I've yet to take its cover off because I technically didn't read this copy yet, but I will. It's all about basically finding a tribe of people and trying to make them happy and building the tribe rather than building the product first. It seemed really obvious when I first came into it of course, that's how you do it. Like, well, how else would you do it? You got to make a Facebook group before you make a product for the Facebook group. That makes total sense to me. Why is that a revelation? It's because this was written in 2002! 2002! Oh my God! Yeah, and everything that he says in the book basically came true. So that's why he has such a sterling reputation, I would say, is a big part is this book. And it's super easy to read. It's like 2 hours to read, tops, super breezy. He has other good books too, but this is like the iconic one. So how do you market a purple cow? Where do you start as a farmer of purple cows? Well, you gotta start with the customer. Okay? And who is the customer? Basically, you are this. You are the innovator on the leftmost side of the adoption curve, and you're trying to find an early adopter who would be that first wave of customers who, when they see a greenfield opportunity, they run after it. They run after it. And what you're going to do is you're going to find the people who already want your idea, who are starving for it, and they're going to devour it without you having to convince them of anything. So who are these early adopters? So the early adopters have 2 characteristics. One, they will actually buy your product. Not just say they'll buy it, not just sign up for a newsletter, not just, not just come to the website, but actually buy it. They'll put money down, sight unseen, potentially on things like Kickstarter. People who are willing to do a Kickstarter, those are early adopter people. And they're able to promote your idea. So they will be an evangelist for you. If they're not willing to get other people on board with the idea, they're not actually invested in the idea as an early adopter, because that's the only way you penetrate from left to right on the curve. You only need to excite the early adopters, and then they excite the rest of the curve. Personas are a fictional archetype of a single type of customer. So you might have one named Todd, who represents one type, who represents the luxury high-end buyer. You might have one named Tina, who represents the entry-level buyer. And they have different attitudes and different psychographics. And when I say psychographics, what does that mean? So different, not just different spending habits, but probably different personalities. I don't know if you know this, but personas already are being used by marketing people around the world today. And you have a persona already picked out for you in more than one direction based on your personality and your habits in large scale systems. And if you don't believe me, you probably believe me. If you don't believe me, wow, catch up to the 21st century. If you do believe me, it's probably because you think, oh my God, you're right. Mark Zuckerberg, he's collecting all my data. And then he's using all those data to make models. And then that model is me, right? And you're like, it's actually worse than you think. The biggest company that actually makes personas in the world, I would actually argue would be the credit rating companies. So this is an example of the attitudes and psychographic data guide from Experian. So Experian is one of the big 3 credit rating companies in America. And basically what they do is they target the right individuals and engage them with messages that will resonate. And basically, they're able to do things, again, based mostly on your credit card transactions. For instance, your attitudes on the environment. Are you a green or a brown? A brown is someone who's against saving the environment. Financially, are you a careful money manager? Are you a smart investor? Health and well-being. Are you invincible? Are you a trusting patient? Are you an image shaper? Media involvement. Are you an advertising receptive? Are you an ad negative? Are you a magazine involvement? And there's all sorts of information and all sorts of qualities that all of us are being rated on different dimensions. So for instance, personal views, family-centered. Reach people who are largely prefer spending a quiet evening at home with their family rather than going out. Or maybe more like, say, religious conservative. Reach consumers who have socially conservative views. They are more pro-life than pro-choice, believe attending religious services is important, and self-identify as a conservative evangelical Christian. They all know that. Just from the stuff you buy. Oh my God. They even have, apropos to earlier last week, political personas. So they can tell if you're a conservative, a Republican, Democrat, an uninvolved conservative, a left-out Democrat, a mild Republican, on the fence liberal. All of these would be dimensions and leanings that might accumulate into something called a persona. So we're going to make a persona. How do you make it if you're not Experian and you don't have all the data in the world to analyze every single purchase that someone makes? So first off, you need to assemble a cross-section of people who represent your potential early adopters. Again, people who would buy something and promote it. How do you find these people? Well, they might be within your circle of friends, hopefully not within your family, because if they're too close to you, they're just going to be yes people. And if they are too far away from you, you probably don't even know who they are. How do you find them? But you need to find at least a first wave of them. And then you can sit down and you can interview them. Okay, don't focus group them yet. Focus groups are hard to handle if you're not a focus group facilitator. You want to interview them. So you should come up with a set of like 5 to 10 open-ended pre-canned questions. You interview them across multiple dimensions guided by this guide. Okay, talking to them about some of the things that they need. And then what you do is you accumulate them into a structured format that I've already made for you right here. This guide right here, boom, personas. Okay? And the persona guide has a couple sections. Okay? We're going to go through them one by one. But basically, this is kind of like you're going to treat it like a real life person that is actually the gestalt of several people that you interviewed. Okay? So how do we do that? First off, we're going to give it a real name, an age, a region, a job, and an education. Okay? So this is Kelly. She's 34. She lives in the Pacific Northwest. Her job is that she's the CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Her education is she has an MBA. Real things like that. What is the average? Not even necessarily what is the average, but what is the archetypal? As in, what are they likely to have and how does that inform who they are? So those are the basics. So like you come up with a basic demographic set, and then you move on to something called the psychographics. So the psychographics are sort of experiences and drivers that the individuals have. The first one would be the hobbies and habits those people have. So those would be the unpaid skill or unskilled activities in daily life that the people do. Good, for instance, right here would be photography. The photography market is actually vast. The thing about the photography market, though, is it's mostly amateur. Most people are doing most people spending money on photography, moving the most units in photography, if not maybe spending the most dollars, are amateur photographers. It is a hobby of theirs, potentially a habit of theirs. And those hobbies and habits actually guide a lot of their consumer behavior and a lot of their opinions. And then, speaking of opinions, influences would be people in media that lead the persona. So for instance, you might say Seth Godin is one of my influences because I not only bought his book, but tell other people about it. I wouldn't say I'm an early adopter. I mean, I came to him in like 2010, and that was after he was already a big deal. So maybe I'm in the early majority, late majority. I'm in the majority. But I'm telling other people about it. So that kind of makes it so I'm being influenced and I'm willing to influence based on this. The kingpin of this area would probably be Oprah. there's so many people who made their entire literary careers on Oprah just endorsing their book one time. Sometimes even to Oprah's chagrin, because she turned out to be wrong about those people. But those would all be influences. Next up, and then the big one. So this is the big four, the biggest four relevant to your product. This doesn't have to be a complete perimeter of their character. It's really more in relation to your product. But there are values that the individual has, so qualities that they will minimize or maximize at all times. So for instance, they might want to minimize the amount of time that they spend on something. They might want to maximize the amount of return that they get on something. They might want to minimize the amount of risk that they have on something. They might want to maximize the involvement of their family or their friends. All of which are important characteristics when you're trying to create a product. And you need to understand why they need that product. And that's part of it. And the other aspect of why they need it would be the challenges, the problem you solve, and why it's useful. Challenges, not quite like taking a ladder up into space, but challenges involving perhaps this is why it fits into their life, or this is why it fits into their job. If it's a B2B solution or a business-to-business solution, it's got to be something that they spend money to save time with or spend money to make money with. What is the challenge that they're having, and how can you talk about that challenge in a way that resonates with them as well? The way that you write the persona is the way that that persona should speak in many ways. Or next, we have the objections, roadblocks to prevent engaging with the idea, the little moat that they're going to put up around themselves just to say no to the idea because most people don't want to change. Even early adopters need some encouragement, although early adopters do not necessarily need convincing in the traditional sense. So generally you would write this down as like, is it a matter of cost? Is it a matter of deployment? Is it a matter of how complex it is to tell other people, the change management aspect of it, as we would call it in the world of technology? What are those objections that they're going to put up as a shield to make it so they don't have to engage with your idea? And having set reflexive responses, even pre-written ones in the marketing copy of, say, your website or your pamphlet or your emails, that is going to give you the advantage that you need in order to overcome those objections and make sure that you make the connection you're looking to make. Finally, the goals, the outcomes and benefits specific to this idea for that individual. And the great thing about the goals and the challenges and the values to a certain extent, all of those are probably variable across the different personas that you might be preparing, even if the product is the same. So different buyers and different users, they have different aspects. They have different outcomes they might want or different benefits that they might emphasize. And you might have to account for that. So maybe we have all of these things. We have all of these things, and we've accumulated them now into a canvas. How do you actually go about filling out that canvas? So here I have prepared this is called Miro. This is a pretty cool little application that enables you to have kind of this interactive whiteboard experience. So these items, these are the 13 canvases that are part of the original launch ideation set. 4 topics with 3 canvases each, plus a bonus one for your spouse or life partner, based on what you want to do. So if we come into this one, we come into the persona one, we can actually see that this is the canvas already laid out. What we want to do when we sit down is you want to sit down with your team. You'll have wanted to conduct your interviews, and you'll want to have the materials from your interviews, the notes from your interviews, and you'll sit down and you'll do 1 sheet per persona that you've arrived at. You might have to really jot down and try to cluster. Maybe there's one person who's in more than one persona. Maybe there's one person who is exactly the persona, and you're almost literally going to do that person. Don't use a real name. Don't use a real age. Like, don't make it that person. Don't just copy paste that person. But you could have someone who's so much the archetype of a persona that it's that person with a different name. So the way that I do it on Miro is I will start dropping in text, making sure that it's big enough. You might start having things like, you might have Eric with a C. Okay. Eric with a C is maybe he's maybe he's 42, so names can be hidden in our identity. He's in Eastern Washington, like anyone you know. His job might be, maybe he's a junior designer, okay? Now, I will say I didn't really define what the product was, but that's the thing. You almost in many ways get through, so maybe as an AA degree in art. And what you do is you get through making the personas and trying to identify people like what you think you need. They're into anime and video games. Ooh, what kind of product are we going to make for this person? I don't even know. All right. And then what you're going to do is once you arrive at what the persona is, in many ways that will lead you to what the product would be, or you're coming with a value proposition, maybe not a whole product, but the value proposition is something that lends to this person, and then that actually triggers what is the offering that you want to give to this person. Because again, you might have more than one product. You might literally have one product that is just, this is a guide on how to be the best self as this persona. And that sounds really silly, but lots of companies that sell like health products and fitness products, they actually just they're selling a tiny bar of soap that is the core product, but then the thing that's wrapped around it is that whole image of themselves. That is the persona. Like they're selling the persona back to the person as the primary commodity, and it's enabled by a little piece of soap or something like that. So influences, Twitter artists, and Reddit maybe. Oh yeah. Look at this mysterious person named Eric who's 42. This person values... they're probably going to be, saving time. So I'm going to assume that they're a junior designer, and for their job, we're going to offer them some sort of like app. Saving time, having fun, making work feel like play. Oh man, maybe if work feels like play, what are some of their challenges? So you could have challenges, things like, do you do time tracking? They're doing pixel moving, so I'm going to write down pixel moving. They're gonna have different challenges. Oh, I will say, you know what I can do, guys? Boom! Look at that. It's even bigger. Should have done that in the beginning. I'll remember next time. Don't worry. So tracking time, moving pixels, those are all challenges. Their objections they might have is, not enough cash. Lack of desire to change, doesn't work for customer. Okay, and then their goal might be, let me go back to that time tracking thing. So invoicing on time, making it fun for the customer so they do business again. So after having psychically interviewed this person, because I'm vaguely like this person, I'm not a junior designer, but I play one on TV. I make all the graphics and all the presentations, guys. That's pretty designery. So after you look at this one, you sort of have your persona now, and you're like, okay, Eric, he lives in Eastern Washington. He's a junior designer. He likes anime and video games, and he really wants to make it fun for his customers, and he kind of does designs anyway. What if we made a anime-themed time tracking system for him, where when he was collaborating with his workers, there was an app for him and an app for them, one app for him that tracked his time and an app for them where they paid. But when they pay their invoice, it makes like fun Dragon Ball Z charge up sounds or something like that. And that's the kind of thing where you're like, the offering is not the new innovation. Like time tracking is not a new innovation, but making a cool anime theme because this person loves anime and you just identify with this person and you want to make them happy because you can figure out a purple cow for them. That is new marketing, as the kids would say. Models for your customers, for your early adopter customers, people who will buy your product and tell people about it, so you can understand, so your team can understand at a broad level how to appeal to them. They're used often in marketing, which is the example that we gave here. They are also used in user experience. I have, for instance, made software products where we had a slate of personas of people who were using the product. Some of the people who installed it, some of the people who used it, some of the people who administrated it. And they were all different kinds of personalities with all different needs and challenges and goals. And the best way to do that was to have the team sit down and come to understand their customers. Because in the world of new marketing, you don't find customers for your products, you find products for your customers. Thanks, Seth. All right, I've been Eric Ralston. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week for more Launch University.